Turnovers again have cost Pitt a very winnable conference game. Now with their backs against the wall, the Panthers must travel into the heart of the Atlantic Coast Conference in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. A loss will all but eliminate them from Coastal Championship contention. A win temporarily takes them off life support. We discuss that and more on this week's Hail to Pitt podcast.
What was your message about finishing it in these final 30 minutes?
Well, it happened in West Virginia where we knocked off number 2. It happened in South Carolina, and it's happening in Pittsburgh today.
Our guys had a lot of guts tonight. We're just going to keep getting better. I mean, that's what it is.
One hell of a game that you will never, ever forget. We shocked the world! Hail to Pitt.
Hail to Pitt. This is the week of October 29th, 2022, and this is the Hail to Pitt podcast. I'm Alan.
And I'm Vince.
You know it is a bad game when it's more entertaining to scroll the tweeter and see all the hot takes on the bad quarterback play. Pitt lost and are losers right now in the ACC. Not a good team. Got to get down to it all, though, this week because, again, they are facing North Carolina, and it's our most dreaded week of the season. So today, Vince, I want to know what happened, what can be done, and who the hell this team actually is. We said we'd know a lot about Pitt after the Louisville game. I think we do. I'm interested to hear what you say. I have some thoughts. I have some questions. We need to get to it all right now.
Yeah, a lot of questions, and I don't think anybody's going to like any of the answers, unfortunately. Just not good all the way around. I cannot believe what I saw this past Saturday night.
Can you not believe it, or did you not want to believe it? Those are two different things. Was it a shocker? I don't know. Some of it felt like it was all boiling up to what happened. I don't know. We got to break it down, and we're gonna work through some things here together, and with all of you listening. We know you're frustrated. It's half of you, the normal size audience. We know after a big loss. So the masochists come back, or are they just the diehards, whatever you want to call them. Thank you for joining us this week on the Hail to Pitt podcast. Let me Carney bark at you and let you know that you could follow us at H2P Show on Twitter. Email us hail2pitpodcast@gmail.com. If you're here, you already know the ways to get in touch and interact, so we thank you. But tell your friends. We appreciate all your feedback there. And, of course, everybody with the doomsday and the hot takes and everything in between on Panther Lair and Reddit. We love lurking. We love interacting there too. So appreciate all you Pitt fans, wherever you may be. And we also thank our sponsors who are joining us and seeing how sad we are here on our call today. Vince, hand over his eyes, can't even believe it still. Hasn't even said hi to our producers yet at Pretty Easy Podcast. But they understand after a loss, Vince won't look us in the eye. I will, because I like to mask my pain. Pretty Easy Podcast will work with you however you deal with a loss or a victory. And if you come manic, depressed, they don't care. They're going to make sure your podcast sounds great. And they're going to make sure you get the show done and it sounds exactly how you want it to sound. That's right, you could do a show with a producer at an affordable rate. You don't need to be a part of some big radio conglomerate or podcast company. You could be independent and work with Pretty Easy Podcasts. They'll help you do everything you need to do to get your podcast going and sounding consistent, great, quality, and also have fun doing it. Go to prettyeasypodcast.com right now to get started.
They make podcasting pretty easy.
They do not really help with, Pitt losses. Sorry, everybody, but you're not going to, whatever you do with the show is not going to help the fact that Pitt lost to Louisville by 2 touchdowns, embarrassing finish, and an embarrassing performance by the offense, and really a rough night to be a Pitt fan, Vince. I think this loss hurts worse than the Georgia Tech loss. Because we've seen losses like the Georgia Tech loss at that exact kind of part of the season.
Yeah.
Just not Pitt's best moment, that part of the season. This game, though, was where a lot was riding on it. And to now be 1-2 in the conference, no good.
We'll talk about a lot of the stuff in this game. that kind of led to the loss. But Alan, what you said, it just, how disappointing this loss was. You're coming off a bye week, and a lot of guys just did not look prepared in this game. I mean, Jalen Barden, wide receiver, we talked about him. How, with Jalen Bradley transferring, how he was going to have to be a guy to step up. A lot of the plays, he didn't know where to line up. Slovis was constantly, barking at him, saying, get over here, get over there. That's just inexcusable to me, coming off of a bye week. On the sack fumble that led to a touchdown that basically ended the game, Gabe Hoy didn't even come out of his stance. It was there. Just didn't know the cadence or whatever it was. I have a whole lot that I'm unhappy with as far as all the shuffling of offensive linemen is concerned. I know there's injuries and all that stuff, and they're trying to get guys playing time and find the best combinations. But out of a guy who is a super senior and on that, I mean, you just can't have that. They just did not look prepared. I mean, there's a lot of disappointing stuff in this game, Alan, but that to me, I'm not saying they weren't fired up for the game, but there was just too much self-inflicted wounds in this one.
Yeah, and that's why I bring up, maybe we didn't want to believe that this was going to happen, because there have been the signs of this exact outcome occurring, and this being the identity of the Pitt Panthers this year, because we have railed on it. Penalties, miscommunications, and really just stupid self-inflicting wounds from the Pitt Panthers consistently now through 7 games. And that's kind of what we should have expected, but we didn't want to believe it because we're coming off of a ACC championship, I think. And now I think, have swallowed that bitter pill. We should now identify the Pitt Panthers as an undisciplined football team that is just not capable of getting out of their own way and making really stupid mistakes that just prevent them from beating teams they should beat. Because talent-wise, they have it. But this is just not a mentally prepared team.
Exactly.
And whoever you want to put that on, coaching staff, overconfident players, I don't know where you put it. Most people are going to say coaching, and I guess you're going to be right there, because when you're losing to a team in Louisville that you definitely should have beaten, but you lost by 2 touchdowns, all because you were throwing terrible interceptions, you're missing blocks, you're missing assignments, you don't know where to line up, and you're having penalties on offense constantly throughout the entire season. That's just who Pitt is.
Yeah, and all this, we didn't want to believe that they weren't going to be this good. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because before the season started, we said this team had a legitimate chance to repeat as ACC champions. They had a legitimate chance, to even make the playoff, for crying out loud. And even after their first loss, when they went, toe to toe with the Tennessee Volunteers, who are ranked, in the top 3 in the whole country, we said, what, hey, if it wasn't for that Slovis going down and Patty going down, they would have won this game. And you're still feeling pretty good about them. But man, has everything just really went downhill since then. But at the same time, Alan, I want to ask you this question here. If you look at this, some of the numbers from this game, Pitt won the time of possession, 36 minutes of possession. They had more first downs. They had the yardage advantage. If it wasn't for those three red zone turnovers and that sack fumble at the end of the game, if it wasn't for that, Pitt, wins this game, not in a blowout fashion by any stretch, but they, even if they score on half those drives or just get field goals, they end up winning this game. And what are we saying at this point? They're still not great, but they're still finding ways to win because they're just more talented.
That's the line. Those numbers, you're right. You bring up the perfect indicator of who this team is, though. That the turnovers right there in the red zone, winning out in pretty much all statistical categories except the turnover battle, which is all important. That's who Pitt is. They are the superior team in a lot of cases. Offensively, even, they're able to control the game a little bit, look okay, and then they just sabotage themselves consistently. It just consistently happens. And those throws by Slovis must be acknowledged. They were acknowledged at halftime. And like I said at the top, I was just enjoying watching people react to those interceptions more than actually watching Slovis try to get his stuff together, because you just felt like he wasn't going to. If you're making those throws, something's up. You're seeing ghosts, whatever you want to call it. That was a quarterback who was just totally out of it in that game and really was not the guy to be, I think, he shouldn't have been in there in the second half for Pitt. I know Nick Patty's banged up. I know Yarnell's so inexperienced, but my goodness, Slovis looked just totally not able to do what was needed to be done in that game.
Yeah, and coach, coach in after the game and the press conference on Monday, he said, this Keaton Slovis is still our guy. He's still the best quarterback we have. Well, that performance, that may be true, but that performance that we had in the second half there specifically, Nate Yarnell could have done that.
I mean, you can call the game around Nate Yarnell and disguise things and cradle him and still be effective against Louisville in that game. The way that they called the game against Western Michigan. And
it's crazy because, on that first drive, they're moving the ball so well. And he had Daniel Carter open underneath. All he's got to do is just dump it off to him. It's an easy first down, and they probably score on that drive, but instead it's an interception. I mean, it just, one play just changed everything, even though they did score on the next drive. It just
throwing bullet passes on planned screens.
My God, that's another one. That was, basically a turnover. That play.
It's happy feet. It's being all up in your head. It's seeing things that aren't there. It's a whole litany of things with Slovis that just any fan watching that game could see this guy is just struggling, and having him work through it, I guess because he has the experience, you want to trust him and the talent, but my goodness, it was really, I just couldn't even believe it was as close at the end as it was, and the score ends up indicating that it wasn't that close because of that sack fumble. But Pitt, man, relying on Slovis to be the leader, he's not playing up to the task. I think we all have to say that. He is the best quarterback on this team, sure.
Well, that's the thing.
He's not leading the team well. He doesn't have any. He's not getting anybody else fired up. He's not delivering himself. He's not being reliable. And there's just no accountability because there's so many penalties. There's so many mistakes being made all over the field. It's not just Slovis. Receivers are dropping balls and fumbling. Running backs are fumbling. Linemen are holding and false starting and not getting out of their stance. That whole offense, all over the place. Mistakes, issues, but it starts with Slovis because I don't think there's confidence in him amongst the team.
I don't think so either, and I see a lot of people blaming Cignetti, and we'll get to that later on. But Alan, I don't think so.
No,
I mean I think he called a good game.
Yeah, no way. It's his fault.
you look at some of those play calls. Some of those drives. They moved the ball for sure. That wild hog formation that they had. I'm not. I mean that. It was effective. I think they were maybe using it a little too much, but it was effective. I think
they had to because that was Cignetti, I think, acknowledging that Slovis wasn't the best option.
But at the end of the day, I mean, the guys on the field got to execute, and it just didn't happen.
You can't blame Cignetti because you see the turnovers were in the red zone. The team matriculated the ball into the red zone, and then they didn't execute, and they made mistakes and turned it over. It's not his fault.
Yeah,
I mean those.
Yeah, I don't
those
think
passes.
So.
Man,
it just and to just it's not like the defender made this great play on the ball. No, these were thrown into double, triple coverage, and especially disappointing when there were guys open that he could have thrown it to instead. And we talked that first game against West Virginia, Allen, where we said Slovis was not getting rid of the ball quick enough. He was taking too many sacks. Well, some of that sacks would have probably saved this team in this game. Just extremely disappointed in this offensive performance. Yes, they did move the ball, but the execution just not there.
Yeah, it is. If you want to label it, you could. I think you could give it the worst, alliterative label you want. And if you know what I'm talking about, I think you do. That's what Pitt's offense is right now. No bueno. Really hard to watch. And then defensively against Louisville, Pitt's defense, I mean, that unit showed up, I thought. They made a bunch of key stops, and they played well enough to win. Really helped, 17 points?
Yeah, and they scored on two of those kind of trick-type plays, and they got guys wide open there. On the one scoring drive, there was that pass where it appeared to me that the guy's foot was out of bounds. Even after reviewing it, I'm still not quite sure how that, but whatever. At the end of the day, I thought that they certainly played good enough to win. It's just, and the thing, you aren't, and maybe it's a little masked a little bit. They're not getting those splash plays like they have. But to me, Alan, when the offense is not threatening, your opponent doesn't need to take any risks. It's not like they need to, throw it in the tight coverage or be really aggressive. They don't need to do that. It's a classic situation of make the other man make a mistake.
Yeah, this defense, goes out and they perform well enough. They're not, like you said, making the splash plays. They're not maybe taking the big risks as much either, because they know that they're playing tighter. You got to play tighter when you're being relied upon. Your offense is only scoring 10 points, and you have no confidence in what they're doing on that side of the ball. So it's a team game, but still the defense held up their side of the bargain, I thought, and held Malik Cunningham in check, who took his chances, was inaccurate, ran the ball, somewhat effectively. I think he could have done better, but Pitt really did a great job, I thought, of containing him and being in the right position, I thought, on the edge, and linebackers getting in the way. The trick play, obviously. Good call there at the right time, at the perfect time. But, Pitt's defense, I can't really, especially comparing them and in this same show right now, having to devote all this energy to just how truly abysmal the offense is. I can't really dedicate any kind of energy to critique the defense, because really if there is something there to be upset about, why even bother when all the focus, at least I think from the coaching staff, needs to be on how to score some damn points when you have a running back like Israel Abanikanda, who still got it in the end zone and still got over 100 yards, but you just are unable to punch it through, and you're shooting yourself in the foot that much. To be that undisciplined, I don't know. Whose fault is it? Because Narduzzi's defense is disciplined. They were very disciplined in this game.
Yeah.
The offense, though, who does that fall on? Is it his fault? Is it Cignetti's? I think when you're that undisciplined, when you're making not just penalties but mental mistakes, classic Gabe Hoy just standing there. A guy runs by him and ends the game. I hate that I was right about that player, but it's a bummer. But when that's happening, I think that gets into the mental side of the game, and that's like confidence, that's trust, that's all sorts of issues for Pitt's offense. I think we're now midseason, Vince. I don't think anyone on the field, the teammates, I don't think that his teammates ever bought into him as a leader when it comes to Slovis. It doesn't look like no one's playing for him, and he's not playing for anybody. He's taking his licks, but I think taking all those hits, maybe there's some disconnect, a lack of trust.
And do you think it was
maybe
just
blaming?
We got this pretty boy coming in from California, and we'd rather have our guy Nick Patty who stuck it out and be. I don't know.
That's all stuff you can't. There's nothing to pinpoint it. It's all speculation.
We don't
it's all
know.
guessing. But one of those things has to be true, because when you're when your offense is that talented, they do have talented players, but to perform that way.
I feel like I say this every week, that they were so dynamic those first two games, and then it just all has collapsed, and it I think that whatever Slovis's injury problems were, has just really affected him, and I firmly believe that I can't think, I can't believe Nick Patty dressing is an indication that he is 100% healthy, because I think if he was, he would have been in there, and I think he would have been in there a long time ago. It's just,
we know Narduzzi will dress guys who are not 100% just to give them a uniform and a helmet for whatever reason. He's
done that. It's just I don't know. It's certainly gonna have to turn around soon, Alan, because they have a tall task ahead of them this week, where I feel pretty confident saying that 10 points again will not get it done.
I would assume so, because it is North Carolina, and that means Pitt needs to be at their best. They're going to be in for a dogfight with a team that is looking as good as people thought this team could be. They are reaching their potential and probably exceeding it right now. UNC 6-1, top 25 team. They did lose to Notre Dame, which is a real blemish on a record for a team trying to build a resume. Losing to Pitt would be a pretty terrible blemish for them as well. But is Pitt capable of beating them? Sure. Going into this game with Slovis at quarterback, I don't know how confident I am, Vince, or hopeful. This is going to be really, really tough to keep up with North Carolina, because I don't think the defense, unless they score, it's going to be tough to hold them to 17 points the way they did Louisville.
Yeah, North Carolina not good on defense, giving up 475 yards a game, 34 points, but they're scoring 42 points a game, putting up over 500 yards a game. What's interesting, Alan, we talked about last week, Louisville, how they were 3-3 coming into that game, and they could have easily been a 5-1 team. Well, you got North Carolina 6-1 here. They only won their last two games against Duke and Miami by 3 points. That Duke game extremely close. I had to come from behind to win that. I mean, North Carolina could easily be, a 4-3 team. Like Pitt coming into this one.
That's ACC football, man. Let's give it up to the ACC, and the line being razor thin between being quality and subpar this year.
Yeah, it is. There's a fine line in the ACC, and North Carolina right now they're setting themselves away from the pack. Have not lost an ACC game this year, and with not too many left. They're looking to win that Coastal division, and with quarterback Drake May, it looks like they may do that. This guy, making a lot of people forget about Sam Howell, Allen, putting up all kinds of yards, rushing and passing, leading rusher on this team. Allen, quarterback again. I've watched a lot of North Carolina games this year. Not a ton of designed runs. From what I saw, but this kid had no problem going out there and creating and making a play on his own. They are going to be tough to stop, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and they're consistent, I think, across the board. Like, they have Josh Downs as his favorite target, but everyone on that offense, much like the Pitt offense last year, just lots of quality receivers who can make big plays. Antoine Green makes some huge plays for them, averages like 20-something yards a catch and is making a big play every time that guy catches the ball. Drake May has the tools, and that's why this team is looking good offensively. Defensively, again, Pitt played a team that defensively very mediocre or bad last week, and they went out and made Louisville and Yaya Diaby look like just the juggernauts of the Ace. They look like what everyone calls Clemson. They look like a Clemson defense against Pitt. But against North Carolina, Slovis will have open guys. He will have a chance to score points, but keeping up with Drake May is going to be tough. And it's going to be interesting. You got the the new young guy who's making waves. Keaton Slovis used to be that. This guy's got to be going into this game with a chip on his shoulder, not just because it's Pitt, North Carolina, but because, this has got to be the lowest point of Slovis's college career after a loss like that against Louisville, minus his injury season at USC, of course.
And I said this last week, Alan. I'm still gonna. I'll stand by my words. Is that I said if they could not, do anything offensively last week, giving the opponent that they were playing, the time to prepare, then they're just not going to do it. And I don't think they are. I don't think this team, with what they have going on personnel wise, at quarterback, given the level that the offensive line's playing, the level that the receivers are playing, it just does not add up to a lot of points being scored, at least through the passing game. I think that they are going to have to really rely on this running game and hope that North Carolina just cannot stop it. And they're going to have to, we always talk about, again, when they play North Carolina, how many points they need to score to win. Probably going to need to score at least in the 30s. As good as Pitt's defense is playing, you're going up against a dynamic team who can score. They're going to put pressure on you. There's going to be pass interference penalties. There's going to be that kind of stuff that you're going to need to overcome in order to slow this team down. The past couple times at home, Pitt was able to do that the past 2 times. But, as we all know, extremely stressful game against North Carolina. This is, I hate, you always say, oh, you're going to need to outscore this team. I don't know what they cannot pass the ball right now. It's too risky to pass the ball right now. They're going to have to. They're going to have to. They're going to have to really just really abandon that, I think, and just run it right at them and run it extremely effectively and hope you get a bunch of turnovers.
I am going to come out and say, though, do not abandon throwing the ball this week, and I would say come out with a similar type game plan you had against Louisville, because one thing Pitt will have going for them against the Tar Heels that they did not have against Louisville, the Tar Heels defense is, I would say, anemic at best at getting to the quarterback. This team only has 12 sacks on the year. They don't put a lot of pressure on you, and I think Slovis could maybe be comfortable back there this week, more so than he has been, and that'll lead to hopefully better decision-making. But even with time and room, Slovis has shown that he's kind of going to be inaccurate or too conservative with the ball. And I just hopefully he's just being encouraged to go out there and sling it and just put it all out on the line. And, don't be worried about squeezing in throws to guys who are covered. Throw it to people instead of throwing it to, just wide open defenders and with nobody near your guy. Happy feet. And a worried trigger finger. That's what he's got.
Unless you absolutely have to force it to somebody, just take the open guy, which, they schemed guys open. Signetti was able to do that.
Did well.
The play action was working in that game. So, I would keep doing that. Keep scheming guys open, hitting them, hitting the open targets, because these guys, once they do get the ball in their hands, they can move the ball. I think it's going to have to be a lot of that. Eventually you are going to have to stretch the field somewhat, I think. But I don't know. The
North Carolina defense, Vince, is not good.
I know that. I know, but we are not good.
Yes. The Pitt offense is not good either, but that doesn't mean I just don't think Signetti should abandon. We shouldn't be seeing Wildcat, whatever you want to call it, the entire game. Unless Signetti and staff have completely lost faith in Slovis, but still want to play him for some reason. I think a similar game plan and just better execution will have Pitt be competitive in this game. And, hopefully scoring in the 30s and winning the ball game, because that's what
one thing I will say look out for, and I'm interested to see if teams, now that it's like extremely obvious, I would think North Carolina is going to try to stack the box. That may play into Pitt's hands just a little bit, because if Abanikanda could just break there's not going to be any safety back there in order to stop him. So if you could just break through the line there, that could be big. He's going to have the game of his life, I think, in order to and Rodney Hammond obviously not 100% back. Still did okay. Vincent Davis had a couple nice touches, but Buchanan is just going to need to be the guy.
Yeah, for sure. And the good thing is North Carolina is going to be deathly afraid of him. Pitt still has that. This is a team, I'm saying it again, talented enough to win this game, but so far 7 games in, the track record shows they won't be prepared and they won't be mentally tough enough, on offense at least, to keep up with North Carolina. The defense is going to need to be a little bit extraordinary in this game, I think, Vince, and that means, I think, getting the ball and getting it into good field positions. Not necessarily scoring, but maybe a strip sack. Haba might be due, Vince. I'm hoping for some sort of big play by a defensive lineman, because Pitt's going to need a play like that or two to keep up with North Carolina, given how inconsistent the offense is. So that's the type of game we're set up, but we're going to get into picking it later. It's only, a 3-point a swing for North Carolina.
I got a lot to talk about with regards to that. So we will get to that at the end of the show.
And that's what I've been waiting for ever since I saw that number. Biggest thing to talk about this week.
I got some information on that, so we will
do
get
not
to
care
it
about that. But my goodness, 3 points after Pitt just lost to Louisville. Something might be up, so maybe we should be a little bit more confident. We'll get back to it though in just a minute. How about we go into my favorite place this week was the Pitternet. I loved it, Vince. It was great seeing all the anger and the thoughts and the reactions to the bad performance. That's when everyone shines the most. And we got some good stuff to talk about here as we dive headfirst into the Pitternet.
Can you explain what internet is?
I hear there's rumors on the internets.
And to all those faceless keyboard warriors on Twitter.
But we're a good darn football team. I'm proud of these guys.
Tito's Panther on Panther Lair. Fire Signetti! Was there a lot of that on the Panther Lair this week?
I guess so.
I don't agree.
Yeah, as I said, I think this is ridiculous. I think I'm not saying he's the best offensive coordinator we've ever had, but I think I think he is far from the issues that they are having right now.
Steel City Champs on Panther Lair. This team and coaching staff talked a big game all offseason. Narduzzi pretty much threw his old OC under the bus in interviews. Now we have seen what has transpired on the field this season. Hopefully Narduzzi is humbled. Was Narduzzi talking a lot of trash on Whipple after he left?
There was some...
anytime a guy leaves the program for another program, I'm sure you're not happy about it. But
there were some comments there, but a lot of this is true. I mean, there were a lot of high hopes for this team. Is Narduzzi going to change his ways? I doubt it. But it is a little disappointing. That's the only word I could describe. The season is not over. Let's see how it ends first.
Far from Narduzzi. I think he's already humbled, and his players are. But how do they react? That's what it's about. Because you could be humbled and then go into a shell, and then everything goes to hell. We don't want to see that, Steel City Champs. We gotta build people up still, even though we are angry about the loss. P Mizzle 88 on Panther Lair. HL should fire him for cause, since he forced out Whipple and changed the offense to this garbage over personal differences. Fight it out in court. Oh, man. I'm going to guess P. Mizzle 88's a lawyer. Got Pitt law.
I don't know if this is something that should be presented in front of a judge. But...
a loss is real bad when you got fans going, sue him! Sue him, I'm so mad! Bring him to court.
I will say this though, that what would this season have been like if Mark Whipple was the offensive coordinator? I think everybody's going to be asking that, because even without Jordan Addison, how different would this have been? I think that's they obviously missed Jordan Addison a whole hell of a lot, but would this have been different? I think I'm not saying it would have been. I'm not saying it would have been better. I'm just saying it would have been different.
Slovis might have been. Maybe he himself would have been better off with a coach
yes, I agree
like
with that.
Whipple.
I agree with that.
I think the big thing overall, the team though, would Whipple have had the offensive line playing better? I don't know. I don't think we could say. Plus, look at what's he doing at Nebraska? Anything?
Well,
got a coach
that's
fired.
one thing people need to. That system took a very long time to implement.
Exactly.
And it was implemented here, and it was running really well. Was that only Kenny Pickett? Maybe, maybe not. But I have to think that Kedon Slovis does appear that he would have fit in better at a Mark Whipple style offense.
Yeah, well, that's never going to be figured out, but you could always speculate and obsess
or maybe
over
try
it.
to take it up in court if you have
Yeah,
to.
or you could take it up in court if you want. I'd rather just move on with the rest of the season and enjoy the chaos, embracing it like I was on Saturday night, Vince. And I got receipts here. Here, as we finish off of the Pitternet here, I got highlights from – I was just on fire copy pasting and sending Vince tweets I was seeing and comments. I was really enjoying that part of the game, Vince. That was my coping mechanism. So I got the receipts here to reread some of these I sent you. David Scott on Twitter said Slovis should not be starting for Pitt anymore, and that was after that second pick. And then you got Harry Soros, who's great coverage of Pitt sports, even said, I have to ask a logical question. How long is the leash on Kedon Slovis? Is it time to experiment with a new quarterback? The pair of interceptions have been terrible, indefensible.
Yeah.
And that is as well said about those throws as I think anybody could point out. They were just indefensible. No quarterback should be making those. Slovis cannot play another snap this season. He's awful. That's Hobie Webster. Vince then responded to me with a Panther Lair much more graphic on Panther Lair than Twitter. Blank garbage, trash blank offense. Flat out terrible. That's VJJ Punisher and Panther Man just railing on that performance. In the first. These are all from the first half, Vince.
Too many asterisks really to even say what they were. I'm not even sure what words they were trying to use. I mean.
We got the Spider-Man meme of, and it says Kedon Slovis, Max Brown, Tino Sunseri, all pointing at each other, looking the same. I wouldn't throw Tino Sunseri in with that group, would you, Vince?
Tino liked to take a ton of sacks. Kedon appears to just want to force the ball now. Max Brown seemed to have been doing better and then got hurt and was out for the year. I don't know. We'll revisit that at the end of the season.
The fifth quarter, Pitt said, please get Slovis out of the game. Go with Patty. I don't think Patty's playing again. I'd go with Yarnell if you're making the change. And then here are a bunch of good ones I found on Twitter, Vince. This is at Thompson Photo 12. Sorry, but the Slovis experiment needs to end. Just not working. He is making this team work too hard for W's. Agreed. Ghost of Whip. Oh, no. Oh, no. The ghost of Whipple haunting Pitt forever. Kedon Slovis is blank dog water, dude. He can't read a field for blank and takes 33 years to decide what to do with the ball. Ooh. 33 years. Maybe longer. Maybe more like 69. Vlad Harris, not Walt, Vlad Harris, at Panther Rants. This offense kind of reminds me of 07. Izzy is shady. Slovis is Bostic.
I don't know if it's quite that bad, but it is. It did look like it a little bit on Saturday night.
I look forward to the day that Slovis is calling games with Billy Hillgrove. Vinny Schaefer on Twitter said, I've had enough of Slovis. This guy stinks. Give me Yarnell. I'm with Vinny. I'd like to see Yarnell play, Vince. Give him a chance. When you already are kind of out of it in conference play, although if you beat North Carolina, no. It would take a real crazy coastal year for Pitt to be back in contention.
I don't know about that, Alan. I've been studying these standings here, and I will say this: I think if Pitt does win this game, North Carolina has a tough enough schedule that they could drop another ACC game before the year. They do have to play Wake Forest in a crossover game. Wake Forest, the top 10 team at the moment. I do think it is possible that Pitt could win some sort of crazy tiebreaker. That, of course, that means
have to win out.
They would have to win out.
And Syracuse is next week. Don't forget.
I understand that. But
that Duke game doesn't look too easy anymore.
No,
either.
it don't. It's really a one game at a time type situation. But I will say that scenario is still out there. They could still do it.
Oh, all right.
Mathematically.
Well, mathematically, I guess. But I like the one game at a time approach. And wait, we got a couple more here. Joe Lanzell said, "Replace Slovis with Hammond." I don't know if I'd go that far. I'd rather Yarnell than full-on wildcat, and a lot more get Slovis out of there. So they were all calling for Slovis's head. What do Yins think of that? At H2P Show, let us know and tweet at us if you're still, after you have digested the loss to Louisville before the North Carolina game or after the North Carolina game. Hit us up and let us know about your opinion on Slovis moving forward as the Pitt quarterback, and when do you make the switch, if at all? It's a question we must ask, seeing how the offense has looked thus far this season. That's the Pitternet. They go nuts, and anybody will talk in the Pitternet. Around town, some people will just stay silent, or there's just more confusion, I think, on where people are coming out when you're person to person. It's harder to maybe express your thoughts. You can't edit yourself, Vince. And I will say Panther fans aren't on the same page right now about anything. Just like the offense isn't going into this North Carolina week.
Another Saturday coming, and the Panthers are playing. Time to find out what the Panthers are saying.
You believe how bad that Pitt quarterback looked last week?
He's still young and that. I ain't jumping any conclusions yet. Mostly, the offensive coordinator's fault anyway.
You sure about that? A kid with pedigree like that, you shouldn't be throwing all them picks,
Wait, which quarterback you talking about?
Well, which coordinator are you talking about?
Hail to Pitt.
What the Yinzers are saying.
So that's what the Yinzers are saying. A whole lot of bad offense being played by Pittsburgh teams at the moment. Questionable offensive coordinators, questionable quarterbacks. Nobody quite sure what the head coach is doing. But hopefully we could turn that around this week all around the city, regardless which team you're talking about. Alan, we had a huge weekend of college football last week. Tons of big games, really exciting. This week, not as many, but we are going to be getting warmed up for some big battles coming on down the pike. But there are a few games I want to run through real quickly with you for this weekend.
Oh, college football. Don't you dare be expecting me to pick winners each and every single week. I did okay last week, Vince, but I still think of the games we selected, a losing effort. TCU did go out there and whoop on K-State last week, so I'm still digging the Horny Toads right now, but they're not on the slate for this week for the big games. We got a big one in the Big Ten, a mediocre one, I guess, in the Big 12 that we're going to get to, and then watching the Vols walk the tightrope. Yeah, on paper, not as big of a week this week after what last week was amazing, and also rest in peace to my dreams of USC and UCLA facing off with either team being undefeated.
Yep.
It's our first non-Pac-12 big week. There's no big Pac-12
it is. Trust me, there will be some big Pac-12 games coming up in the coming weeks. I'm sure of it. But we'll go to the Big Ten, a big noon kickoff. Number 2, Ohio State, laying 15.5 on the road against number 13, Penn State in Happy Valley. This is basically Penn State has to win this game for the Ohio State, Michigan, the game, not to determine who's going to win that Big Ten East championship. I guess I'm not too surprised that Ohio State's only a 15.5-point favorite here. Penn State, beat up on Minnesota with their backup quarterback last week. To me, Ohio State just another level. I understand Penn State's got some pretty good defensive backs, but the number of quality wide receivers that Ohio State is throwing out there, they're going to get theirs, and I think this is too much. I think Ohio State will win this by a couple scores.
I like that cover too. Penn State in their big moment against Michigan, they fell and they were handled pretty easily, and with even with good receivers, I mean, how many good quarterbacks have these receivers faced at Penn State, or these DBs faced at Penn State? Brown and Wheatley, quality safety, sure, but I don't think they're going to be able to make the type of plays you need to make against Ohio State to obtain victory, let alone cover against a team that's looking as tough and mean as any team in the country. Probably going to the college football championship of all championships against Georgia. If you ask me, Vince, the way they're playing right now, I got Ohio State winning. Give me, Michigan put 41 up on Penn State?
Yep.
I'll say Ohio State wins 42-20.
Okay. In the Big 12, number 9, Oklahoma State Cowboys getting 2 points. This is actually down to 1.5 in the Little Apple against number 22 Kansas State. Alan, I feel like I'm saying this every week. This is a Big 12 eliminator. Both these teams with 1 losses. TCU way at the top. Oklahoma State surviving a comeback win over the Texas Longhorns last week. The loser of this game will have 2 losses and not own the tiebreaker here. So this is just a massive game in the Big 12. Very interesting. I'm looking at the Westgate right now, Alan. This game opened with Oklahoma State as a 1-point favorite, and it's been bet down to now Kansas State is the favorite here.
Wow.
Kind of surprising. I don't know if it's that Kansas State at home. They are tough at home, no doubt about that. Maybe their defense is enough to slow Oklahoma State down. I am going to kind of lead with Kansas State here. Yes, they couldn't go up against that high-flying offense of TCU, but I think they have enough their running game with Deuce Vaughn to muck it up a little bit and get a victory.
I'm going with the Pokes. I think this is going to be an interesting matchup. Kansas State, I liked what I saw out of them against TCU. Gave them a scare. We're up in that game, and eventually the Horny Toads' crazy offense and just toughness of Max Duggan came through, and now they're facing Spencer Sanders and this Oklahoma State offense that equally just firepower, just 30, 35, 40 points, 60-something points in games. So I just, in the Big 12, I'm always going to side on the team that knows how to score more consistently, and that's why I'm going to go Oklahoma State to win 42-37. Give me.
Okay. In the SEC, number 19 Kentucky, 12.5-point underdog in Knoxville against number 3 Tennessee. Tennessee's got Georgia on deck next week, Alan. Georgia, they got the cocktail party this week. Kentucky, I just can't see them having enough firepower to stay with this Tennessee team at all, unless Tennessee's really looking ahead here. I understand. Kentucky, a decent running team, and play some decent defense. But this, to me, something just smells about this line. I would have thought this line would have been well up over 2 touchdowns. But those desert people, they know more about this than I do. But I'd still lean with the Volunteers here.
I mean, I'm picking them to win, but I understand the line. I think this Kentucky team plays good enough defense, and we've seen if a team like Pitt can hold Tennessee to no points and a half, they are human. This is not this offense is clicking, but they're stopped. You can stop them with the right scheme on offense. So possession and executing. It's going to be interesting to see Levis in a big spot like this. I mean, he's in games like this all year long, putting the tape out there, trying to be one of the big draft picks at quarterback. But if he gets this win, that'll be college career defining, a huge boost to the program. A lot on the line for Kentucky against the Vols this week. And, of course, the Volunteers are trying to walk that tightrope, ride the Lightning all the way to the SEC championship. And it's going to be a thrill ride the entire way for them. I don't see it being a blowout as good as they've looked. I think Kentucky's defense can match up and hopefully for them get some turnovers to keep it really close. But I still got the Vols winning. I'm going to say 26-19.
Wow. Okay. I don't think it'll be that close or that low scoring, but we'll see. Tennessee's defense, they gave up a ton to Alabama, but this year I think they have been pretty impressive. All right, the big game, Saturday night, 8 o'clock, ACC Network, the one we're waiting for here, the most stressful game of the year. Pitt, a 3-point underdog in Chapel Hill against number 21 North Carolina, Allen. And to add up just a little bit more intrigue to this, so I'm looking at this line here. 3 points, as we're saying, pretty much 3 points everywhere you look. 3.5 at the win right now, Alan. But I'm looking at the Westgate. This line opened as Pitt was a 4-point underdog, and it has been bet down. At William Hill Caesars, this was opened as a 4.5-point underdog, and has been bet down to 3, Alan. So some early support for the Panthers here, enough to move the line at least. With a total of 64.5. So I guess they're kind of projecting a 34-30 game here. Certainly after watching the game last week, you can't fathom Pitt scoring 30 points in a game. I cannot understand this line whatsoever. North Carolina, you would think, they're going to get theirs in this game. As tough as Pitt can play against them, and has shown the ability to slow them down in recent years. North Carolina is scoring better than they have in recent years, and just with the way the offense is operating at this point, how could they possibly keep this game that close?
Yeah, there's a lot of different thoughts in my head on this, and then I think, okay, well, how are they picking this game? How are they doing? They're taking away any emotion that I have or you and I have of this game. So take that out of our brain. Take the recency bias out of our brain and look at just not the performance from last week, but overall through the season, the talent on the field, and then really assess it. Pitt has a defense that is capable of bigger plays than UNC's defense, so they could disrupt the game a little bit. Pitt's offense is capable of controlling the clock in this game, keeping UNC off the field, hopefully, so that would make sense. And when the pressure's on now in this moment of the season, this late in the season, where you're now every game creeping up, oh man, we win this one, we're really in line for a championship appearance in the conference. More and more and more, with that kind of pressure on a younger quarterback on a team like UNC, this moment for them is really big. It's a huge challenge for them against the ACC champs. So then you look at the 3-point line, and it makes a little bit more sense, especially if you forget that Pitt looks so abysmal on offense against Louisville, and maybe that's not who the desert people think the Pitt offense really is. Maybe they are better than what they look.
But they didn't have great offense against Georgia Tech. They did not have great offense against, Western Michigan, against Rhode Island. They didn't look tremendous against Virginia Tech. It was an all-time performance from Izzy in order to score all those points. I mean, this line, Alan, is saying that on a neutral field, Pitt would be, a slight favorite in this game. At Heinz Field, they'd be even a bigger favorite. At Acrisure, an even a bigger favorite. I mean, it just, I don't understand this at all. if you did not tell me what this line was on this game, I would have said North Carolina would have probably been a 10-point favorite.
I would have said
maybe yes, somewhere between 7 and 10 points.
Yeah.
Pitt's defense, is good enough to be worth something there. But the fact that they opened this
also
as a short line and they got some immediate money, at least significant money, came in on the Panthers. It kind of tells me something. So I'm gonna think positively here, and that somehow, some way, we're gonna see an all-time performance from Izzy again, and I think we are going to see the defense really rise to the occasion again and maybe get some more turnovers here. And Pitt is going to win a wild game that is going to be lower scoring by North Carolina standards. And I think somehow, some way, Pitt is going to win this game 27-26.
Wow. That is really an influence on you then, seeing that line. And
I don't know any other way to explain it. I respect those people a lot out there in Las Vegas. Maybe I shouldn't, but
I understand. That's what I was saying. I understand the logic. That's what I was going through just there, working through it. But then again, knowing this Pitt offense as more intimately, I feel, than even a desert person probably does. I just don't see it. I don't see how it translates on the road, how it gets fixed.
I don't either.
I don't understand how the line is that low, and I don't see Pitt winning, unfortunately. I have a real bad feeling about the rest of the season unless big changes are made to personnel and they start looking forward to maybe getting other players reps. It might be that kind of season for the last half of the season. This game is going to be really tough. I'm going to pick North Carolina to win 33-16 over the Pitt Panthers, which makes a lot more sense if you were going to make. I bet you would have been a lot closer too if I should have picked the game last Sunday, the day after the game. At
Sunday and certainly Saturday night, I would have told you that this, we're losing this game, 40-10 or something like that, and it wouldn't, and it still wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I do not expect to win this game at all, but something just seems weird about this. We've seen, Pat Narduzzi, especially his defenses, when they've been counted out, they've somehow risen up and made some big plays. It is not going to be easy. Make no mistake about it. The ACC definitely wants North Carolina in that championship game against
it's a fine
Clemson,
line
to have a one-loss team up there against an undefeated team. It's going to be tough. This is going to be an extremely tough game, extremely stressful, not for the faint of heart whatsoever. But I'll be tuning in ACC Network, 8:00 prime time.
What's the weather? Maybe they know something about the weather. Is there going to be a random hurricane hitting North Carolina?
I don't know.
In the middle of the game. Oh man, I don't know.
If Bino Cook has anything to say about it, it will.
If there's anything I know too this season, Pitt under those bright lights, a little too bright so far. But hopefully I am wrong. And hopefully that razor-thin line in the ACC creeps its head up on the Tar Heels, and the Pitt Panthers leave that place, that house of horrors in October, leaving North Carolina with a victory. And that's what we're all hoping for, even under these doom and gloom circumstances. Let us know your predictions, and of course, hit us up during the game. We love reading, especially when Pitt's losing. We needed that last week at H2P Show.
I don't.
And of course, hail2pittpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to send the email. Vince, you got anything left to tell everybody before we head to North Carolina? Had to do it one more time.
Just throw out everything that happened last week. Positive thoughts only. Get ready for this big game. Get ready to pull off a big upset here, and hail to Pitt.
I think we'll leave it at that. The positive energy flowing from Vince going into this big one against the Tar Heels. Everybody enjoy it. Another game up for Narduzzi and the Panthers here in the ACC. And then coming back next week, we will prepare all of you for Syracuse and, of course, recap the Pittsburgh Panthers against the, what the hell, one more time, North Carolina Tar Heels. Until then, everybody, hail to Pitt.